Professor of History and Public Affairs at Princeton, author of numerous books. He's always writing a book. He churns them out during the show. It's a new book came out. Julian, welcome back, my friend. I haven't seen you in a while.
Yeah, it's nice to be back.
So we have a lot of things to talk about politics. We're 6 days away from an election that is just so vitally important. In fact, later I'll play a clip. I was at a town hall Monday in Greensboro. I moderated Tom Steyer's town hall, his last one down there. And I'll play a clip of someone at it that I think summed it up so well. But first of all, I want to get your reaction. You're Jewish to the horrific, what I view as a terrorist attack in the Tree of Life synagogue. What was your reaction to that, just apart from politics as a human being?
Human being, it was horrible. It was everything you've been fearing will happen, happened. It was brutal. It was brutal, and it was both shocking and expected, which made it bad. I was literally a week ago, I was giving a talk here in New York at an event, wondering if something like this would happen and getting a debate with someone about what the cost of all the extremist rhetoric coming out of the White House would be. So it was very sad, and unfortunately, it doesn't seem like much has changed.
He doesn't care.
Yeah,
I mean, were you shocked that in America in 2018 that Jewish Americans have to fear violence simply because of their faith, or is that something being Jewish that you're always concerned about that?
I'm always concerned. I believe a lot of the isms in this country run a lot deeper than people believe, whether it's anti-Semitism, sexism, Islamophobia, racism, the whole thing. I think all of these are very ingrained. And I think part of what we've seen in American politics is more of an effort from the president, but others, to tap into this. And that's the danger. It isn't gone. And certainly for the Jewish community, I think anti-Semitism, there's a long history of it here. It's often violent, from vandalism to physical attacks. So people shouldn't be surprised that it has not disappeared. And now it's just bubbling up to the surface. For a while, it was hidden, but I think it's coming right back up.
You know, in years past, I would talk to friends who were Jewish about, like they would say, our parents would tell us that you always have to be worried because one day they might come for you.
Right.
And I go, seriously? And they'd say, yeah, but things have changed. But I have numerous Jewish friends who in the time of Trump said, I'd forgotten we were a minority. And now I'm aware, before this shooting, in the last few years in Trump's campaign, where you had David Duke, who was saying things about Jewish reporters are going after Trump, and Trump refusing to denounce David Duke, and seeing what was bubbling up, and then Charlottesville as well, where they were chanting, Jews will not replace us. And Trump still not denouncing. He denounced them by paper, but when real words came out, they're fine people on both sides. There's no fine people cheering Jews will not replace us.
Yeah. That
they were keenly aware of being Jewish and being, in fact, I had Rick Unger. Do you know Rick Unger?
Mm-hmm.
Talk about that very thing. He's older than both of us, saying, I didn't think this was an issue anymore. But in the time of Trump, I actually, for the first time in many years, have been concerned.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's generational. Anti-Semitism was at its worst in the United States in the 30s and 40s. It was explicit. It was violent. Yeah, I wrote something where I found in Dorchester, Massachusetts, their Irish Catholic gangs would go around during the day hunting for Jews. It was called the Jew Hunt, and they would beat them up. And there were stories like that, but it subsided. And I think...
and in politics, wasn't it in politics too? I mean,
in politics,
Father Coughlin,
exactly,
famously anti-Semite. Even people like FDR at first was embracing because he was like beyond Fox News. He had a huge audience on the radio. Sadly, he was a Catholic priest. I think from Canada, had this huge audience, and then finally they began to turn on him.
No, right, and he would talk about an international Jewish conspiracy, all of this, and the America First Committee with Charles Lindbergh term is now back in the news. Lindbergh was very sympathetic to the Nazis. So I think, though, my generation, which is your generation, it did get better on the surface, and it wasn't something you dealt with. I dealt with it a little. I remember in my youth, I would hear anti-Semitic remarks every now and then with friends in high school. They just toss off a joke, but it hasn't been prevalent. I think I'm curious, millennials, Generation Z, they're growing up now in a really different environment where it's in campaign ads. There are groups out in the open saying really, terribly violent things about the Jewish community. And now you have this, which is worst massacre of Jews here in the United States.
And you have this pivoting from the left, and even the ambassador of Israel, Ron Dermer, to the U.S. saying, well, the worst anti-Semitism is on college campuses.
Yeah.
And there might be some anti-Semitism, but what they're conflating often is the criticism of Netanyahu's policies and trying to stop that. And it's not the same. These people are chanting about Jews in our places. David Duke openly, Richard Spencer, white supremacists talking openly to the media that we want a white homeland free of Jews.
Yep.
They don't even mention Muslims, and we'll get into it because this terrorist who went to the Tree of Life synagogue hated Muslims too. If you saw the reporting, he called Muslims evil. But he went after Jews violently as opposed to a mosque because they believe Jews have the power. We are mud people, whatever we are. We're powerless, and we're brought in by powerful Jews. And that's why Jews suffer. In fact, if you read this guy, he hated Jews, but one of the reasons said evil Jews are bringing in evil Muslims to our country. And that's the real anger. And I can't believe this is 2018. I was on Howard Feynman on MSNBC Sunday, and he was from that congregation years ago, though.
Yeah.
And now he lives in New York, I think. And you could hear him. He kind of like trailed off, slightly emotional, like, I can't believe we're at this place in 2018.
Yeah, no, but we should. I think that's the world we live in, and that's the message. And I think you're right. There's often a debate. Where do you see the most with anti-Semitism? And I really believe anything that does pop up in college campuses is nothing compared to what you see right now with white nationalist groups who are serious. They're serious people, meaning they're violent. And I think people are discounting the ferocity of the anger toward different Jews and other groups right now. And they do have this imprint, they think, from Washington. And so they feel emboldened right now, whether you're talking about a deranged person who's on their own, reading the internet, getting all worked up, watching Fox News as we have in the studio right now with the caravan, which to me is unbelievable.
And we'll get into that.
If I can say that Tucker Carlson's doing this a few days after someone just blasted and killed 11 people using this very story in their head. It's dangerous stuff we're dealing with, and it's a mix that will be hard to put back.
And the point you made is something I think was lost on people. Maybe now they're getting it. Is that, and I shared my article from November 7th, 2016 for CNN. The next day was the election, and my article was that if Trump wins, it doesn't satiate the bigots, it emboldens them. And I didn't do this in a vacuum. I pointed to George Wallace and Ross Barnett, another segregationist who won in Mississippi. When they got elected governors of their respective state, it didn't end the violence. It saw an uptick in church burnings. You had the 16th Street Baptist Church burn a few months at bombings. You had Birmingham turned to Bombingham. Ross Barnett, you had what was known as Mississippi Burning. The movie happened. These bigots, these horrible racists feel like they have someone who's got their back, who's in power. And they feel that with Donald Trump. I mean, David Duke has literally said, you're voting against your heritage if you don't support Donald Trump. And Trump, and I played again the other day, when Wolf Blitzer said to him, Jake Tapper said, David Duke, I don't know this David Duke. I don't know anything about white supremacy. And you've criticized Duke in the past. You can't say this because you're nonpartisan. Donald Trump's a vile white supremacist enabler. I don't know I don't care what his real views are. I see what the reaction is. You
don't have to be partisan to say what he does. I mean, there's a clear record where part of his political strategy, and we don't know his personal intentions. On the one hand, he could be sympathetic to this stuff. On the other hand, he could be totally cynical and even dismissive of the people he's excited and saying, I'll just get their vote. I'll get them riled up and we'll contain him, down the line. But either way, there's a clear paper trail of him making statements, using images, doing these interviews like the one you're referring to, where he is clearly sending it. It's not a dog whistle. It's an open signal to these elements of the electorate. And he's been doing it in the last month really quite explicitly again. So this is part of his politics. It's not a partisan statement to say that. And I think we need to get to that place. And then you can evaluate what you think of that. But I don't think it's really an open question.
I shared an article, and I've written about this in the past about Trump when he refused to denounce David Duke. And I said, look, I can't tell you if he's anti-Semitic, but there was something happened in 2013 with Jon Stewart. And Jon Stewart's real name is Leibowitz. Donald Trump was fighting in April. I'm looking at the tweet. April 2013. They're feuding, Jon Stewart and Donald Trump. And for some reason in this feud, Donald Trump tweets, I promise you that I'm much smarter than Jonathan Leibowitz. I mean Jon Stewart, who, by the way, is totally overrated. And then he tweeted about, little Jon Stewart, what are you hiding? And this kind of sort of idea. And Jon Stewart raised later, I think he was trying to tell people I was a Jew who didn't know it and trying to get people riled up about that. And to me, this was, before running for president, this said something about who Donald Trump is. Because there's no other reason you put Leibowitz in there.
Right.
Like, why would you?
No, right. And it fits with things we've read from people who know him, either now or in the past, with many groups. The things we think we are hearing are things he says in private. This is who he's been, at least rhetorically. And look, it's still different when he was real reality TV star Trump than the president, because the difference is the president gives these words and these ideas a kind of legitimacy that no one else can give them. And when you do it repeatedly, whatever his intentions are, people out there in different parts of the country, they're hearing the president say this is okay, and he needs to be a countervailing force to that.
And by the way, Jon Stewart, a few years ago when that came up again, said what Trump was doing basically goes back to an old white supremacist trope, which is Jews amongst us. Mm-hmm. And look, one of them has a show on Comedy Central. How about that? I'm telling you, there are people who tell me things and I tell them, you're wrong. When they say Donald Trump is stupid or I don't know what he's about, those are not words to describe Donald Trump. At this point, the words I use him to describe him are diabolical and sinister and dangerous. Yeah. And that's the man who's in the White House right now. And as a Muslim American, since 9/11, I would expect anything, frankly. I mean, Muslims have been attacked, they've been killed, our mosques have been burned down. To see this at a Jewish synagogue, to me, was more stunning. It would have been heartbreaking if it was a Muslim mosque, of course, but there was something more painful, that it was a synagogue, because it was completely, to me, unexpected.
Yeah.
It wasn't something I thought was going to happen. I just never thought this could happen. I never thought someone would go in there and do this.
I mean, I think, look, for some in the Jewish community, the period where there wasn't a lot of this, that's the anomaly. I mean, that's how Jews see their history, and based on the history. It's just constant oppression, constant violence, constant persecution. I mean, Jews have always been a moving people for that reason. And so I think this was like a short window, at least the last few decades, where that wasn't prevalent. But I think many in the Jewish community I know who I've spoke with are terrified.
Now?
Once this happened, yeah. This was different than just hearing some words out there. This is a level of obviously violence and terror. And the president came on and said everyone should be armed, which is ridiculous. Synagogues can barely afford to paint their walls. And now he's talking about putting, having the rabbis have guns or something. So I think
arm the rabbis,
right? So I think this is like
I hate to laugh. I'm sorry, because arm the teacher's one thing, but arm the rabbi. And if you've seen rabbis, and I'm from
a family of rabbis, so I have the joke perfectly. Yeah.
So I've probably been to more temples and synagogues than some of my Jewish friends, because I do the comedy show with my friend Scott Blakeman,
right?
And we've done many in temples and synagogues over the years, and I used to joke I've been to more temples than my Jewish friends in New York, because that was probably true, even though I wasn't there for prayers or anything like that. There was an article, Neil Steinberg was on my show. He's a writer for Chicago Sun-Times. And he wrote an article 2 years ago, and I had him on then, right after the election. And it was about, now there's a paywall, so I can't see the whole thing here. But what it was about was that he interviewed Jewish people in Chicago. This is 2 weeks after election.
Yep.
And one of them summed it up, said, every instinct I have in my body tells me get out of the country now. And that other Jews echoed that. And his point, being Jewish himself and proud of it, it's like, no, don't leave. But he goes, I want to share what I'm speaking, and I'm stunned by this. And I retweeted this after the shooting and saying the words in this now are more painful to read. And he responded, he's a nice guy, he goes, but still, I disagree with that sentiment. This is our country. We're not going anywhere. And I said I didn't tweet it for you to leave. I was tweeting it to say, 2 years ago, Jewish Americans knew from that rhetoric what history might tell you.
Yeah.
And it's the beginning of the article is just stunning, where it's like, your neighbors will gladly kill you and move into your house and not think anything of it. and these are lessons from the Holocaust.
Yeah. I'm writing one of the books I'm writing is about a guy named Rabbi Abraham Heschel. And he was a rabbi, and in the 60s, he was a big civil rights activist, big anti-war activist. He was an Orthodox Jew. But he always held that ultimately when things got bad on issues of racial justice, on issues of human rights, it was going to be bad for Jews too. That ultimately the fight against anti-Semitism had to be a fight for human rights. This was central to how he saw the world. So it's not surprising in 2018, given the kind of reactionary arguments that have developed for all communities, that the Jewish community would be subject to the hatred as well.
So let's take a quick break. We'll come back with Julian Zelizer and talk a little bit about the politics of what's going on. That, you know, over Julian's shoulder when we were sitting here, there's Tucker Carlson, who I call Tucker Klansman, ginning up fears of the migrant caravan. And Donald Trump, you know, I'm sure you saw it, wants to send 15,000 troops. Why not just do the Normandy invasion? Why not just just 100? Why not? I'm going to put 1 million troops on the border. There's no limit. Why? I mean, I was playing a joke earlier that Trevor Noah had a great joke from last night where playing news clips saying 5,000 troops is how many we sent to go to ISIS to fight ISIS because we weren't committing full troops. Now 15,000 would be more than we have in Afghanistan. Why not? And he was saying there are 30 million undocumented immigrants today, and Chuck Tapper's like, he's just making up numbers. It doesn't matter anymore, which I think contributes to the dangerous climate we live in.
Yeah,
because his supporters, 90, 80, almost 90% believe him over the news. He could say right. Tomorrow Muslims want to do something or Jews want to do something. It's unthinkable, but he could do that, and they'll believe it. He's already done it about Muslims. He said that it didn't get covered much in the campaign. Other things he said, like Muslim immigrants are coming here and trying to impose Sharia law, which is the old trope. Things like we know who the terrorists are. Like my community saw everything that didn't make national headlines. He starts ginning that up again. You might see more anti-Muslim hate, and we've seen a fair share. But let's take a break. Come back with Julian right after this. You're listening to the Dean Obeidallah Show, where we crush Trump's lies every single day.
On SiriusXM Progress 127. The biggest stories of the day. Right now. This is the Dean Obadala Show.
On Sirius XM Progress 127.
And welcome back, Dean Obadala Show. We're chatting here with Julian Zelizer, CNN contributor, professor of history and public affairs at Princeton. So let's talk about, well, we'll get into the politics in a second. You know, the hope that Donald Trump would have ratcheted down the demonizing rhetoric, no one could hopefully believe that. No one could actually expect that. Not this close to a midterm in any event. So him demonizing the caravan and saying, he said there were going to be Middle Easterners in it last week. He said there were Muslims.
Threw it into the mix.
So, and then he kind of backed off that one. But the idea that people from the Middle East are going to fly to Honduras and then hike for 2 months. Right. I have cousins who won't walk down the street for Uber. Okay, they're Muslim. Like they're not gonna go like, to get to America I have to fly Honduras and then I have to walk for 2 months. He's like, forget it. They're gonna fly to New York on a tourist visa, and so it's just ridiculous what he's saying. But what do you make? I mean, Fox News certainly from 8 o'clock on, when Tucker comes on, is just an arm of this administration here. I don't know when they're going to show responsibility, and I don't think they care about it.
Yeah. I think two things. On Trump, I wrote a piece in The Atlantic a few month ago saying the Trump theory of politics. And basically it's very simple, and it's that Republicans will keep coming home. And he sees this world, and it's not wrong that we have this very polarized world, and it's a world where the Republicans have both moved more to the right than Democrats, and they're more ideologically committed than Democrats. And so he just keeps playing to that over and over again. And it's not simply the base. He's counting on the Republican Congress to sit tight, other Republican voters to say, well, a Republican's better than a Democrat.
Right.
And so every message he does, even after this weekend, is right on point. It hits all the themes that for the Republicans matter this day and age, such as immigration, such as attacking the media. And he has a huge propaganda arm with Fox News, which is now totally kind of flipped. It's always been very partisan. Now it's even more, I think, in the last year. It's literally an extension of the administration. And so, look, he's making a bet that in this day and age, that's smarter than efforts to reach the center and achieve bipartisanship.
You know, I guess this would take more of a mental health professional to understand, and I'm not joking either, that if you tell a progressive, hey, there's a caravan of a few thousand people coming to the southern border, there might be a little concern here and there. But if you tell those progressives, they're 1,000 miles away, they won't be here for 2 months. You're like, well, okay. You know, that's sort of my reaction. Okay. And then if you tell a progressive, hey, there have been other caravans, we've never had a problem dealing with them. They apply for asylum or they're turned away. That's the way. And they go, okay, fine. I can't tell a Trump supporter. I could tell they've had some. They're 2 months away. Why are you sending troops out? Well, you got to get ready. What? They're 2 months away. They might not even make it here, depending through the winter. They usually come in the spring. I had Raul Reyes on who said, who knows if they go through the mountains, what happens? They might get turned away by natural issues that go on. But still, facts don't matter because when you're using fear, it overpowers everything.
It's fear, but it's also they are predisposed, many Republicans, to not want immigrants or refugees to come into the country. So the stories just fit into the narratives. So that's another case where President Trump sensed where the GOP had moved on immigration. Since the 90s, you've seen this really hard-line takeover. And so then you tell the story of this dangerous invading caravan, and he can tell the story in a way many Democrats can't. I mean, he is a storyteller.
Sure.
And Fox provides the images. And so you almost have a movie that is so threatening. But many Republicans are predisposed to think that danger is there. So I think that's why it works. And many Democrats, they're not even at the starting place where this is a grave threat to the country compared to other things. And so then that's part of what's going on.
Did you ever read Drew Weston's book, The Political Brain?
No.
He's like a psychologist, but it's from like 2006 now, but it had to do with literally the mapping of the brain. And George Lakoff, I think, touched on the same thing. And even Frank Luntz may have touched on it, but a different, not a clinical way, that you can show the same stimulus and the map parts of our brain that actually are triggered differently and some are not.
Yeah.
And fear things work with the Republicans. They just don't work with us. It just with a progressive, you're going to look at the flaws in it. You're like, come on, that's, whatever. That's what we do. They take it, and so they don't. I don't know why they don't mind being lied to. That's the part I don't get. Like the sense of self-esteem. I don't I'm being sincere.
I think for a lot of Republicans, the lies are just as great, if not greater, in their minds from other parts of society. So
that's why.
Look, that's why Trump picks up on this fake news. They believe, and this goes back decades. I mean, and Nixon would talk about this, that the mainstream media is lying to you. They're telling a story that looks objective, but it's not. Universities have all these liberal professors, et cetera, et cetera. So I think either they say, well, Trump says his lies, but it's not as if anyone else is better, or at least he's our liar.
Right.
And in the end, he's fighting for things we want.
Right.
And so I think that's how it kind of works.
It's when you talk about the universities are liberal and all that, and over your shoulder, Tucker Carlson just having a conversation on college campuses. He just was having it about it's all liberal and freedom of speech is under attack, and you can't speak when you want because, poor white supremacists can't speak on a college campus, and people object to white supremacists on their college campus. They want people to surrender. They want people to be submissive to them. It's not even accepting. You want to bring a white supremacist to college campus? That's horrible. But the answer should be more speech. That's my view of the whole thing. It's not to shut it down. But if a private school wants to say no to white supremacists, they can. I try to get Liberty University, the Falwell School. I emailed them. I called them. I said I would come for free. I'm not even kidding. I wrote a whole article for the Daily Beast about my whole process, and I was not even being a jerk. I was being completely sincere. I'm like, your students, evangelicals, have the most negative view of Muslims. Let me come there. I'll perform some comedy for free. I'll talk. If we can film it, not film it, whatever you want. I kept calling and emailing, nothing. And so I told the Beast, my editor, it was like a year ago, they go, why don't you write about it? Because it was time like Ben Shapiro was going to some campus. And I supported Ben going to camp. I don't like Ben, but I support his right to do it. And he's tweeted to me that if some school is stupid enough to invite you, then sure, you should go speak at their college. That's the kind of relationship we have where we both view each other as morons, which is kind of nice. But I don't think he's I don't think he's horrible. I just think he's a right-wing guy. So let's talk about the election. Do you think the MAGA bomber, as I call him, and the terrorist attack in Pittsburgh play out on this election this close to the midterms?
I don't know what the effect will be. I think I do think it's pretty clear that the last 2+ weeks before that helped the races tighten, and even
from the Republican side.
Yeah, yes. And even the House races are. It's not as clear where that's. Everyone's saying House goes Democratic, Senate that's Senate Republican. That's the easy prediction, but right now it's like both are pretty competitive. And I was just talking to a pollster who said, the Democrats might win the House. They might only win it by a narrow majority, but that's not even clear. Right. I think this partisan strategy really played a pretty good role for the Republicans going into next week, and it will help with turnout. I don't know what the last week does.
Right.
Maybe nothing, because again, as I watch the news, as I listen to the news, everyone seems to be exactly where they were. And in our short attention span culture, these news stories just go by.
What I saw, I love polls. I don't know why I do like polls. I guess it's trying to give some kind of understanding to something that's so amorphous and ambiguous. Right. I'm a control freak, whatever it is. But in any event, and what I see are more trends. It's never one poll. And I always tell listeners, never look at a poll and go, that's it. Look at trends. That is much more helpful. Before Brett Kavanaugh, the trend was there was a Democratic gap growing in a really good way. After Kavanaugh, that closed. In the last week, it started to move back close to where we were. First, Trump's approval rating overall has gone closer back to where we were pre-Kavanaugh. Not completely. There's still some residual there. And a lot of the Senate races where Democrats had a little lead and then lost the lead back, but it's margin of error stuff left and right. And people look at a poll, they go, whoa, we're up by 1%. That's nothing. That's nothing,
that's exactly
folks.
Right.
That could be down by 3 or down by 2 if it's a margin of error poll with 3. So, but it does show a trend of moving. But here's the big thing. It's going to be turnout. I mean, what's remarkable, everyone's like, this is going to be the hugest turnout. 2014, the turnout, 36%.
Yeah.
Around almost 37. The lowest since World War II because there was a war going on.
Right.
But when you look at 2010 and 2006, 41%. When we're talking about people like this could be a huge turnout. What do you think we might see? It's a guess. So you don't know.
I think you'll have huge. Well, I don't know. I mean, look, the potential for huge turnout is very real. It looks like it from all the early voting. People are voting. I think both sides are going to be equally passionate in this election. And I think I understand, and we've spoken about the Democratic enthusiasm. I think that will play out. But I think what we've learned, you're going to have high turnout in the Republican Party, and then you throw in some of these states, the voting restrictions, both in terms of actually throwing people off the rolls and scaring people for coming out. And those are very real this year.
Sure.
Georgia, for example, that's going to be a real part of the story. And North Carolina, there's many states where these things are kicking in. So I don't know. I think you will have high turnout, but it doesn't mean anything to me in terms of where it goes.
But it's funny, high turnout. I wish we had 90% turnout.
Yeah.
It should be.
Yeah.
If we're lucky, we're at 50. If we got to 50%, everyone's like, oh my God.
Right.
But that's so sad.
Yeah. No, midterms, no one really votes. It's a day of activists usually, and it's terrible because when you look at American history, the midterms really matter. They can
GOP,
change
but the
politics.
GOP is known that Democrats have not, or they didn't care.
That's true. No, that's true. They have taken congressional politics more seriously, I think, just as they've taken judicial politics more seriously since the 80s. They've done a very good job, the Republicans, in never letting that slide.
Right.
And they've invested money. They've invested money in local races, local organizing. That's why there's so few Democratic governors right now.
Unreal.
And it pays off in redistricting, and it pays off in these midterms. And I think Democrats, this is a big story in my mind, more than do Democrats have a great spokesperson. Why aren't they investing in this kind of party building? Because in the end, it really matters. And getting that vote out can mean the difference between a totally different era in the next 2 years or one where the president is checked.
So let's take a break, come back, talk more to our friend Julian Zelizer about what we might see now based on history about the gap now in the generic poll showing Democrats leading based on a few historical things. And also talk a little bit, are there some races people are missing, especially these governor races? I think even the media, not just people, but and it's hard for me to get governor candidates on, frankly, this time. In the last year, I had Ralph Northam and Phil Murphy on. But now it's just, for some reason, there's so much going on. It's tougher to get the candidates on. I wish I would have gotten more on. But I think the media is missing. That's a potentially bigger story. So let's take a break, come back right after this. Progressive values are the best of American values, and we need to keep fighting for them to save our country.
Don't go anywhere. This is the Dean Obadala Show on Sirius XM Progress 127. New perspectives, important voices, influential ideas. This is the Dean Obadala Show on SiriusXM Progress 127.
And welcome back, Dean Obadala Show. So, Julian, I want to play a clip for you. It's like a minute long. It's from a town hall Monday in North Carolina. I moderated Tom Steyer. I moderated one before, and this was his last one. We're going to play tomorrow night in the third hour, a lot of it.
Yep.
But so it's about 300 people there. And here's comments from a woman that I think resonated with so many progressives. But what was interesting to me is listen to the way she says it. It's almost with a somberness, but with a focus, an understanding of the stakes before us. It's not a rah-rah comment. And here's clip number 3.
Hi, I'm Carol Walker. I'm from here in Greensboro. I'm 72 years old, and I don't have a question. I just have something I'd like to say, and that is, this is the most important vote in my entire life. And it is the most important vote in my children's life, in my grandchildren's life, and my great-grandchildren or great-great-grandchildren's life. I am so afraid if we don't change this now, we are going to see an end to this democracy. We now have a conservative Supreme Court. We have a conservative Congress. We have a conservative president. So where are the checks and balances at this point in time? I am almost afraid to wake up the Wednesday after the vote because I don't know what I will do if we don't flip Congress this year.
So that was a sentiment that summed up so much. But at the same time, I moderated a town hall in New Orleans in August, and the entire thing was about policy issues, climate change and healthcare. Everyone was about, we got to win. We got to win. What do we got to do to win? Asking Tom, what more you can do to win, and what do we do? Laser focus. The stakes are so high here. And Democratic enthusiasm, I wrote an article for CNN a few weeks ago showing that Democratic enthusiasm was slightly higher than Republicans, but that was not the remarkable part. The remarkable part was Republican enthusiasm now is around 78% on this poll. It was 74% in 2014. They're always enthusiastic about midterms. Right. Democrats were in like the 60s. What's remarkable is Democrats are in the 80s now. To me, that's the big story. I'm hoping that this, you can hear it in her tone. It's a grasp of the weight of the moment we're in. It feels like we're in a war, to be honest, for a lot of people when I talk to them.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think there are midterms we've had like this, even recently, where the stakes to the opposition party feel like it's more than the balance of power in Washington. It's more than even a mandate on the president. It's literally a statement of the values of the country. It's going to shape how much power one branch can have. And I think that's the poignancy and importance that this midterm has now taken on. I would add, I think Republicans feel the same way. I feel they think they too are in a war of sorts about truth, about information, about the direction of policy. And so I think this is one of those intense midterms that in some people's minds rises to the same kind of importance as a presidential, and that's why you're going to have high turnout. Again, they still have to come out and vote. That's always a big difference. Yeah.
What about, Trump has his rallies, promises made, promises kept. And I wish Democrats would do a thing about promises made, promises kept, and Trump, like bigotry, gotcha, racism, gotcha, corruption, done, sexism, checked, because he promised that during the campaign, either implicitly or explicitly. Implicitly being he wouldn't give us his tax return, so he was saying, I'm going to do whatever I want. Who knows where I'm making my money? Screw you, America. I don't care. To using racism and using bigotry and using sexism. Yeah. So I think Democrats should run. I don't know if that works or not. I just like it.
Well, in some ways, I do think that's what a lot of that's what someone like the person you just played, that's what they're thinking about. Often in politics and analysis, people dismiss for the Democrats these issues of identity and race and all this, and they say Democrats need to think of the bigger issues or right. ones that are winning. But I actually think in this election, if that's on the Democrats' minds, if what this presidency has represented to many Democrats is what they're thinking about on Election Day, that's going to lead to good turnout, because that's the real fault line right now. It's not about economics. I don't believe that's where most people are divided right now.
Right.
It's really about the values that the president has been pushing and represents, and whether you think that's the United States or not.
So tomorrow, a jobs report comes out. You think it plays no? I mean, it'll probably be I imagine it'll be a good jobs report. I mean, in that I don't think unemployment can come down that much, frankly, where we're at. Real unemployment went up to 7.5% last time. That the number that economists use, but that's slightly inching up. I don't know what he can hope for if wages creep up a little, but inflation is creeping up. But what about the fact the stock market lost 5% this month? NASDAQ lost 8%, the biggest loss in a month since 2008, since the Great Recession. And that's getting no coverage on any of the media. I don't know why that's not covered.
Right. Well, back to your comments on the caravan. In some ways, it doesn't matter to the Republicans. I think the story was pretty much set on the economy a month ago, meaning the stock market was good, and that will continue to be sold right through Election Day. And it's still good enough in terms of where unemployment is. That's a problem for Democrats. There's no way around that. Not even that people will vote because the economy's good, but they might be comfortable with the status quo. And it might lead some Democrats not to turn. I always think that's a non-turnout issue, meaning people are comfortable, they're okay. I could imagine some Democrats saying, I'll sit this one out.
Well, look, if Donald Trump was not who he is personally, his approval rating right now would be, he'd be easily, they might even gain seats, to be honest, in the House. But for Trump, but if not, but for Trump, he's not elected. But for this caricature of this horrible human being that he is, and it's not a caricature, it's him. So what about Democrats don't win the House? What do you think happens?
The party's gonna, I don't know what they're gonna melt. They'll literally melt down in front of us.
Is gone. The Democratic leadership is gone. They have to go. They should retire, not resign from their seats, but resign from leadership, and let a next generation. What do you think it does? What happens for America?
Well, if we wake up after Election Day and the Republicans have maintained control of both chambers, I mean, it would be as devastating as 2016, because that would be seen
worse, actually, on some level.
Yeah, that would be seen as even if it's by one vote majority in the House, that will be seen as a mandate for Trump, and that the Democrats are on the wrong page. You would have a meltdown in the leadership. You would have deflated voters in the Democratic Party, and I think there'd be a lack of enthusiasm in some ways, even for 2020. Not enthusiasm, but a lack of confidence, which can really hurt the party. So I don't know what would happen, but I do think a lot of these issues we've been talking about for the last hour would gain even more legitimacy in this country, because
I can't even think if there's no check. The only thing is we're going to win a bunch of governors' races. We're definitely going to win 4 or 5. It could be 8 or 9. So the governors will have to be the protectors. And the attorney, like Sean Shaw was on, who's going to likely win, said, my number one job is to be a check on Donald Trump. Now, if Congress is if the Democrats have the House, he doesn't need to do that, frankly, because they'll have subpoena power and agenda power, and they can set the tone. But if not, we're going to rely on those activist attorney generals to bring lawsuits against Donald Trump for what it's worth. You've got to do that. But it's not a good scenario. Yeah. And
even a narrow House majority for the Democrats, I think the president could spin.
Well, I don't care, though. I don't really care. If we get it by one vote, he'll spin anything.
Right.
Because then he'll use... Actually, he would love to have the House be Democrat, frankly. He would use it because he can't get legislation through anyway.
He doesn't care.
So now he can be like, it's them. That's why vote Trumpers, not Republicans in 2020. But that's what he wants. He wants loyalists, not actual legislators. But so what happens if what do you think it would take a shocking turnout the other way to make Donald Trump vulnerable for a 2020 primary? Because a lot of these races are margin of error.
Yeah.
And while I don't think there are going to be a lot of upsets, I think there's going to be some. What if somehow Democrats get the Senate, even by I know it's long shot, but it's possible.
Yeah. No, if that happened, maybe a John Kasich or something would be ready to launch a primary challenge. I don't think it would work. I don't think anyone's going to beat him in a primary, but you'd at least have a more divisive primary if that happened. It's still hard to see the math of how that happens, but yes. I mean, if the only way the Republican Party changes, and this isn't about them, it's about parties, is really a decisive defeat that scares people into saying, if we don't change, 2020 will be better. I don't know if that's going to happen, but you have primary challenge.
But sometimes the decisive. Well, what about 64?
Yeah,
Goldwater Republicans get destroyed, but then they go on to embrace that kind of extremism in a way
down the line. First,
down the line,
down the line, down the line.
It's kind of interesting how you see the seats.
Yeah.
I don't think. I mean, you.
I mean, this is different in that.
Is there any connection between when you look at Goldwater and Trump? Is there any connection there?
Sure. I mean, that's when the shift to the right starts in the GOP. It's a failed effort. Picks up again with Reagan in 1980. Takes off in 94 with Gingrich in the House. And that shift of the party is what ultimately leads to Donald Trump. Goldwater was more refined. He was more of a legislator, but he's very right wing. And so this is a culmination of all these decades of trying to change what the GOP is about. It has changed. And in some ways, he embodies where the party is perfectly. He's not an outlier. It's not that people are following Trump. He just understands where the party has come.
Could you give us a prediction? What do you think? I mean, it's just a guess. Do you want to or no? You don't.
It's worthless. But no, because the margin of error, I mean, that was the lesson of 2016. The margin of error is such that you actually don't know. It is a turnout decision. Right. And so I think the only thing I keep telling people, it can go either way in both chambers. And it's foolish to think that either chamber right now is a lock, certainly for the Democrats.
And what do you 2020 Democratic fight for president? It's slightly begun already. I mean, the DNA test by Elizabeth Warren was certainly, and then Kamala Harris about a tax credit type of thing. Does it start within days?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it started a little bit, but it will start. There'll probably be debates within a few months.
That's what I was going to ask. Because the media knows right now, even Democratic debates will get ratings because of the world we live in. And CNN, I think they'll have forums. Like they'll have a Democratic forum. And it'll be Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, Bernie Sanders tonight together. And there's no fighting. They just say their things. I would watch it, though. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I want to see all of those. I want to see Joe Biden. I want to see even my friend Tom Steyer. I don't know if Tom's going to run or not, but we got like 25 Democratic candidates out there.
Bloomberg, too. Yeah, I mean, part of it is natural. This day and age, after the midterm, it's natural for the campaigns to start. That's just how it happens. Part of it is the year of Trump. Everyone, a lot of people are obsessed with politics. They are looking at it, watching it in a way I haven't seen, certainly in my lifetime. And then the media. I mean, there is this media news complex, which is constantly covering this, all the networks. So there's always space to do this, and they are going to want to start showcasing them. So, maybe by next December, January even, we're going to have the first. It's coming. So the race begins.
We'll take a break, but might also be coming is Robert Mueller's report in this window right after the midterms or wait until January. And what's stunning, and I had Danny Savalas on, that report may never become public depending on Rod Rosenstein. I think we would all learn what's in it, but let's take a quick break, come right back.
Dean Obadala Show on Sirius XM Progress 127. Dean Obadala Show on Sirius XM Progress 127.
And welcome back, Dean Obadala Show. We're live here with Julian Zelizer, CNN, professor at Princeton. So, Julian, you're going to have no prediction. Okay, what about this? Forget seats, but do you think if you had to give a Nate Silver type of thing, 6 and 10 Democrats? I know it doesn't matter. Do you think, would you be more surprised? Let me put it this way. Would you be more surprised Democrats win the House or don't win the House?
I'd be more surprised if they won the House by a large majority.
But even by one seat, though.
Yeah.
One seat, you get all the subpoena power, get all the agenda power.
Yeah. I mean, I think some Democrats would be still in these swing districts. They'd be nervous to join the majority. I don't even know how that would work, but I really can't make a prediction. Look, my bias is, again, it's the Republicans are going to do a lot better than people think. Certainly in the Senate, maybe in the House. And I think the energy of the last few weeks whipped up by the president will be significant. So I'm not where I thought it was a month ago, where I did see a blue wave.
By the way, Trump was in Trump just now went after the media saying they're trying to spread anger and division. And people wonder why bombs are sent by his supporters and threats are made. And I hope that, and I made this plea on the show, if you're a Trump supporter, because some listen, I'm like, don't fall for the lie. Don't let Trump radicalize you. And I tell them, I've said the same thing to Muslims, to young Muslims. Don't let ISIS and Al-Qaeda, don't fall for their lies. Don't let them radicalize you, because you pay the price and your family pays the price when you're not here. Same thing for Trumpers. I know the ones who listen here are not going to do something, but they might have a friend who says crazy things.
Yep.
Tell them they're the ones, they're giving up their liberty and their lives, perhaps, for a man who doesn't care about them.
No, I think last week revealed the real serious dangers of some of what we've heard, and now there needs to be a response in both parties to what happened.
And it's not going to happen with the Republicans. So, Julian, thanks very much for being here, my friend. I always appreciate it. We'll talk to you hopefully November 7th. That night, you'll join us for a little bit to give us a breakdown. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Tomorrow, back all new show, Dean Obadala Show. I'm Dean Obadala on Twitter, facebook.com/Dean of Radio. Have a great night.